What's up guys, it's me Jeremy, and as the season comes to an end, I want to give you guys some tips for how you can climb the ladder and win in Soloqueue. Before I get started, I just want to announce the final results and situation for the build on my PC. I should have it done by this Friday and begin streaming by potentially even this weekend. Thanks to everyone who donated, and the winners for the skin were selected randomly, and they've already been given out. One final shout out to my friend Andre from lolskinshop.com for providing me with these packed silver skins to give out, and I would definitely appreciate if you guys check out his website for me. He sells rare skins at some pretty solid prices, and he's having a major Halloween sale that is going on until the end of October, so I definitely recommend that you see what he's got. Anyways, this is a video about winning in Soloqueue. Before we start, I just want to note that I worked on this video with my friend Noob51, who climbed to Diamond in just a few months. Maybe it was actually under 2 months or so. So these are definitely some Diamond level tips. Anyways, let's get started. The first thing you want to do can happen right before the game begins. Make sure you're playing in a very solid environment. You try your hardest when you play ranked, so make sure that is really true. Do not have any distractions or real life problems that could hinder your play, and make sure you aren't tired or hungry as well. If you have a clear mind, you can divert all of your focus towards the game. This will greatly increase your reaction time and your map awareness, since you'll be more focused on the game and be aware of what is going on in that much needed split second faster. Also, do not play champions that are weak in the current meta. Even if you love Scion or Heimerdinger or whoever that no one plays, there is a reason why no one plays them. People play champions that are meta because those champions are meta due to the fact that they are very good. Now this is somewhat of a thin line, but do your best to keep the weak champions to normal games. This will increase your ability to make an impact in your game, since your champion picks will be much more viable and overall just stronger. Now this doesn't mean play meta champions that you suck with, it means that you should get good on meta champions and be ready to play them. In addition, in champion select, it's almost always a very good idea to let people play the role that they want to. That way, you know that they can perform at least to some extent, unlike if they're forced into a role that they can't play very well. In addition to that, during the game, you need to communicate heavily. Communication is the only way that you can have an effect on what your teammates do. I always notice that players who claim to get poor teammates always lack in communication. Coordinate ganks with your teammates by talking or at least pinging, rather than expecting they will know what to do. Ping for them to fall back if you know they are being stupid, and things like that. Be willing to take that step further and make a ton of calls in your games. Time major jungle camps, wards, and abilities, and things like that. In some Soloqueue games that I find myself carrying, I can easily type over 500 words, just telling my teammates what to do, and it works, since they'll almost always listen as long as I'm not feeding, which leads me to my next tip. Your goal in every single game is to outperform your direct opponent, and if you are failing to do this, the most important thing to do is to minimize your damage. Okay, so maybe you got tower dove by that Cassin and he killed you for free, and now you're behind in lane with pretty much no chance of winning it, but it's your job to make sure that he doesn't quickly go 10-0 by ganking side lanes, or give the team tons of gold by dominating objectives. When you're losing in your role, you need to make sure that your opponent cannot snowball. On the contrary, if you're winning, you need to make sure that you snowball your game. If you get a kill in your lane, recall, buy some items, and get another kill with the use of wards to avoid the enemy jungler. Then get another kill, possibly from a gank or something else. And then you need to make an impact on the rest of the game. If you're pretty much 3-0 and you haven't left your lane yet, it's either before the 10-minute mark into the game, or you really need to start doing things elsewhere on the map. I'm so sick of seeing top laners go 5-0, and then they simply just sit top trying to deny their opponent more CS. Take your tower and roam. Roaming is pretty much the best thing you can do to carry a game, and this works both ways. If you're 0-3 top lane and can get a kill for your mid laner by roaming, they can snowball their lane and maybe even carry you despite you losing your lane. But you also need to watch out for your opponent's roaming. Even if you are losing your lane, you need to follow your opponent's roams and do your best to stop them, or at least capitalize on their roams in some way, such as pushing down your tower. Roaming is something that both the winning and the losing side of a lane can do, and as such should be taken advantage of, and also try to be stopped if it is your opponent, or at the very least let your team know where exactly your opponent is roaming to, so that they will avoid any ganks and you can gain advantage in your lane through CS. In Soloqueue, it can actually be a very good idea to focus on taking dragons. Loads of Soloqueue players, especially in Silver and Bronze, completely ignore dragon for pretty much the whole game. Taking free dragons by communicating with your jungler and using pink wards is actually really easy, and can help you out a lot, since it's pretty much worth almost 3 kills for your team. In addition, you should never, ever rage. But that isn't enough. If one of your teammates begins to rage, what you should do is defend the person being raged at. What this does is it causes the person being raged at to feel a little bit better and be able to blow off the rage, of course, while the rager will just likely switch to raging at you instead. Cope with this rage by simply muting or ignoring the messages of the rager. Be careful with muting them though, because that can hinder the communication of your team. You want to avoid all rage within your team though, not just from yourself, and that will create a solid environment for your team to play in. Another thing that can work well in Soloqueue is to find unexpected strategies. Things like invading, level 2 cheese, fast ulting, teleport, outmaneuvering, and buying loads of pink wards to make ganks easier can all work extremely well in Soloqueue when performed properly. These are strategies that Soloqueue players are not used to playing against, and thus are very vulnerable to. Take advantage of this and be a proactive player and make plays happen. Also, itemization is very important to succeeding. It's almost always better to itemize defensively, which does include offensive items with defensive stats of course, such as Zhonya's Hourglass. But this is almost always better than building a straight up glass cannon. That's because these kind of items allow you to win duels with your opponents, while still being very strong in teamfights. And of course, buy a ton of wards. Map awareness is huge in Soloqueue, since your team isn't likely to communicate with you the location of the missing opponents, and one good gank can decide a lane. One thing that a lot of players don't do though is to buy a ton of pink wards on any role. Pink wards are amazing on top laners and mid laners especially, as they can secure easy gank paths for your team while also warding for the opposing jungler. Pink wards are easily one of the strongest items in Soloqueue, so take advantage of them. And I know this one might be a little controversial, but I strongly believe that you should never surrender in a ranked game. I've seen games won from 30 kills behind and sometimes even 20,000 gold behind or more. Even if you're behind, it is Soloqueue, and it's always possible for your opponents to make a mistake and throw the game. Even if the game seems absolutely hopeless, just focus on analyzing your own play while you hope that your opponents will make a mistake. And if the game is to the point where victory is definitely impossible, then it's likely that the game will end really soon anyways, so surrendering pretty much does nothing for your time anyways. I'll only really surrender if I have a significant reason to leave. And of course this goes both ways too. When you're really far ahead of your opponent, you cannot let up, because throws do happen, and they happen very often. So don't let up, even if victory seems absolutely certain. It's also important to note Baron. Baron is the throw magnet of League of Legends, and avoiding it in Soloqueue is almost always a very good idea, even if it's a 4v5 or 3v5. Baron is often just way too risky to attempt, and can easily cost you the game, especially if it gets stolen. I would only ever do Baron in Soloqueue if you've killed 3 people on the opposing team or more, or at the very least don't do it without every single entrance warded, and fight the imbalanced fight when the opponents come in, rather than continuing the Baron. Baiting Barons is always a better strategy than actually trying to take it. It's also very important to take each game at a time. Just because you got lucky and got carried that last game despite your poor play, doesn't mean you'll get carried this game. Or just because you stomped your lane and lost the last game, doesn't mean you won't be able to carry the next game. Now, that doesn't mean streaks don't exist. If I lose 2 games in a row, I'll always take a break. And if I'm winning a lot and playing really well, I'll try to pump out as many games as possible as long as I don't get tired, since I want to ride my streak of solid play. But look at your mistakes in each game individually, and focus on improving yourself. Write yourself physical notes on major mistakes that you make. Even if you stomped the game, there's always something you can do to improve, which leads me to my next point. Above all else, always play Soloqueue to improve, rather than to win. If you play to win, you'll likely just end up frustrated. But by playing to improve, even in the slightest, you can avoid the rage of losses, while also improving so that you can succeed in the next game. If you play to improve rather than play to win, you will get better, and the wins will come naturally. My name is Jeremy, and that is it for my video on how to win in Soloqueue. I'd love if you could support me with a like, or join me on my North American chat room Gaming Curios, which I am always in when I go online. Please subscribe for more awesome content in the future if you enjoyed this video, and I'd love if you could follow me on Facebook or Twitter, of which I will have links in the description. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.